JD, I'd like to bring on our guest. So John Muse, he's Dave Meltzer's favorite booker. Obviously, he's a friend of the show. We always toss.
Bury our friend 30 seconds into the show. That's what we do here.
Well, everybody knows John. John's been around a long time. He was been a booker there in Michigan for years. Was once about to be called up to WCW, the Big Bang with Eric Bischoff to book the cruiserweight division. How you doing, John?
I'm great. How are you? Even though we started hot, I'm great.
No, we love you, man, and we're really excited to finally have you on the show.
I'm glad to be here. I apologize for being incredibly hard to book. The key was the key was this. Number one, work is insane. I coach some kids for baseball. So spring and summer are really busy with tournaments. And then in the off season, we do a lot of, indoor practices. So it's hard. And then anything I've got to really prep for, because I've had a couple people ask, can you come on the show? But there's a lot of prep. And that's kind of hard for me at this point.
Right.
Just to get cutaway time. So like this weekend, for example, I'm going to be 2 days at baseball, 2 days at work.
Wow.
So, and I'm going to use like the hotel time when I'm off for baseball to try to cram some AEW work I'm doing. Nothing official, just statistics and some things I'm trying to look at as far as their booking.
Right.
So work on that when I'm not doing baseball. But I spend a lot of time on baseball fields this time of the year.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Go ahead, JD.
I was like a man after my own heart. I sympathize with that schedule because it's similar to mine. Because I'm a
you coach too.
Mm-hmm. That's year-round coaching. It's not just the seasonal stuff. So I sympathize.
Yeah, my kid went to college and he's playing ball in college, and it's like he moved on to that, but I didn't stop. A lot of times when your kid goes, you stop. When he's done and you're not coaching him anymore, you kind of say, okay, I didn't do that. I liked the coaches I worked with, and we just kept it rolling.
I started coaching right out of college.
Okay.
Like I never had a break, and I didn't have a kid till I was 36. So I plan on stopping when he goes to college. Because at that point I'll be damn near 60. So
yeah,
and dead. So I plan on hanging him up at that point.
Well, let's not plan that last part. Let's plan and just stop.
The coaching may kill me. We'll see.
So my daughter
dude,
does.
Go ahead.
So I have a little girl, and she does ballet. I don't know shit about ballet. I can't help her one bit. And then after ballet is over, she's got her recital this coming up Saturday, which I'm very excited for, by the way. Lots of pictures coming to Facebook. Yeah. And then she starts gymnastics. Also, don't know anything about gymnastics, so I can't really be a coach for her. But when she starts softball, that's when Dad gets involved. Dad's excited about softball.
There you go.
Dude, that's the nice thing is you need to have that break thing. That's what Andy with soccer. When he plays soccer, Dad zones out and he gets to just do his own thing. But when it's wrestling season, he's asking lots of questions, and it's a little bit more intense.
Yeah. So John, one of the reasons why we wanted to bring you on, we really like JD and I always kind of like pepper you with questions and booking ideas and booking philosophies. We're constantly bugging John. It's got to be annoying to him, by the way.
No, it's not. I enjoy the challenge, the thought process.
Like we literally talk every day. Like I'm not over exaggerating, but we talk literally every day. We're texting each other something stupid about wrestling all hours of the day. Like I'm looked down at work and I got like 5 texts from you guys. Like it's awesome. Like it's literally talk every day.
Sorry when I get on a roll, and I don't sleep, so. You never know when the text is going to come.
That's true. I'll wake up and I got like 12 texts from John. I'm like, when does this man sleep? It's crazy.
Well, and then for me, I wake up. I usually wake up at 5 in the morning, and I'm on Hawaii time, so I'm 6 hours behind John. So I'll wake up to 37 texts at like 5 a.m. But it started at 2 a.m. because you guys are so far ahead of me.
Mm-hmm. Sorry,
yeah. I'm in bed at 2 and then up by 7 or 8. That's my schedule.
Yeah. Well, it's cool. Well, the main reason why we wanted to bring you on is that we got Double or Nothing this weekend, and I don't want you to rebook the territory. The show's already booked. The match lineup is the match lineup, and we don't want to go into that. But I wanted to take a look at the main matches, and I'm just kind of curious as to what John would book for that match? Like the match is already set. So what would John do for that match? And then where would they go afterwards? And then eventually I want to venture over into All In, because All In is probably going to I'm saying it right now. All In's the biggest show in AEW history, most likely, considering they have that big stadium. And we don't know what it's going to be airing on. They said it will be broadcast. We don't know where, but I'm thinking that this might be the most watched kind of premium event in AEW history. So that's the big show of the summer to me. Yeah. So first of all, I just wanted to pick your brain. So Anarchy in the arena. So if it were you got the two teams, you got the BCC versus the Elite. It's been my favorite story in professional wrestling the last couple of months. I thought they've handled it beautifully. And to me, in my opinion, it's the main event of Double or Nothing. It might not close the show, but that's Mike's main event. That's the people's main event, so to speak. How would you book this match, and where do these characters go from here?
All right. So let me start with this, just so I set like a level set on this stuff. When we're thinking about the booking for AEW, we've got to think about multiple things. Because they've got a lot of shows coming. So you got to think about Door. You've got to think about All In and All Out. And if you go online, you see people just predicting, oh, they'll run this and they'll run that, and they'll run this and run that. And everybody's talking all in, all in, all in. Mm-hmm. You can't do that. You have to be thinking of both, because All Out's a week later. Yeah. So whatever you're going to do there, some of that's going to feed in. You're going to have some things that are exclusive to All In, and you got to kind of think of both of them together. So it's really kind of hard. You can say, look, I think they should run this or this and All In, and that's valid. But if you're thinking about it from the bigger picture, you want to come out of both of those shows as hot as you can come out. Mm-hmm. You want to ride that momentum from All In with that big, huge audience. You want to come out of it with something that makes people really interested in All Out, and then deliver there too. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to step back and I'm going to probably predict a little less coming out, just because if you look at what they're doing, they've got kind of an it's open-ended right now, right? So we're coming to a closure point. They can go in a lot of different directions come out of here. There's not a lot of hints after. So there's a lot of ways you can go. So as far as Anarchy and Arena, they're just putting the Elite back together. So I think you've got to put Elite over probably. That's where I'd head. You're looking at probably MJF winning at the end, unless of course they just throw everything out, right? I mean, there's a lot of ways you can go with things. So I would probably lean towards, unless you're going to really go long into the summer with this, I'm thinking probably the Elite, but I could be wrong. You can go a lot of different ways with it. Depends on how far you want to go, but they didn't give us much from like the Elite having their big moment on this last show now that they've reunited. So let's give them something is kind of where I'm thinking, but I could be wrong there. So I would think Elite, big brawl, have fun, tear the house down, and they're going to, right? Mm-hmm. Last year's Anarchy was great. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how you feel. I'd be interested to hear how you feel, because I go back and forth on that. I'm like, well, I can put, BCC over, and then we kind of extend things, but I don't know if I'm going there.
I guess the question is what do you do with, because again, like having, like we'll have your conversations, and I tend to think of things from like a character journey brain, and you tend to think of things from like a wrestling booking, how does this make money kind of brain. So I like our conversations. I guess my question is, where do you see these guys going at the end of the day? Like the thing about these big, we always think these big stable feuds should end with like stables going their separate ways, but it never seems to happen in this company. They just kind of exist in another plane. What do you think needs to happen with these two groups at the end of this? Like, where do you see this jutting off?
There's no indications of where they're going. Obviously, the Elite are back together as a unit. You could extend this a little while longer. I think we're going to probably get Omega Ospreay at Door. I'm really hoping some going. So it's really hard to predict. They can go any way they want. That's the problem with this. That's why I don't like to get into predictions, because unless you've had a little bit of a breadcrumb, they can go a lot of different ways. I hate giving a non-answer, but it's kind of a non-answer. But
it's hard to see, yeah.
Well, that's and it might be by design, right? Because there's going to be points where you're just closing a lot of chapters. Now, I think there's more mileage in the feud. In the Anarchy in the Arena scenario, it doesn't have to be a blow off, because if you look at it, last year it didn't blow off, Jericho appreciation and BCC, right? So I mean that kept going. So you don't have to blow that off. So you can go either way with it. I'd like to see the Elite get a win just because they're back together now. But you can go either way with it.
So after the match, so with the Elite, because you got Omega, Hangman, and the Young Bucks, because as a unit they're great, and then as separate entities they're all great. As separate entities, they're all main eventers, which you don't really get that in a lot of these groups. To include the tag, like the Young Bucks, are absolutely main event talent.
Oh yeah.
So say they win, say they win. Where do we go from here? Because I think I've seen Moxley versus Omega, one of probably the best feud in AEW history. But we've seen that a lot. We've seen Hangman and Omega a lot. So then do we go, I know we're looking at possibly, Ospreay and Omega at door. Maybe do we go in an Elite United Empire feud? Aussie Open just signed. Do we do that and then kind of venture over there? And then what happens to the BCC? So what would you do? What would you have the Elite be doing after Double or Nothing?
Well, we got to sort out Callis, right? So Don Callis has to be sorted out where he's going to go. I assume probably UE. I don't know. I could be wrong, but when they had that angle, right, where Callis was going to explain, here's why I did what I did or whatever. As soon as the brawl started, BCC showed up, he vanished because they don't want to give you that answer yet. They don't really want to hint where he's going. We could find out, this weekend, what he's doing, but I think maybe a UE thing's going, because again, we got door, right? So you almost don't want to come out of door or come out of this weekend with a lot of things that have to be, some things will, yes, but not all things have to be resolved, because you're going to go into door, especially if it's going to be Kenny and Ospreay. So you may have the Callis involvement, and that's tied in with that, and they go into that direction. Depends on when they want to pull the trigger on whatever Callis is going to do. I assume he's going to align against Kenny wherever Kenny goes. So if door is next for him, that's where Callis may go. In which case, now you've got Page and Bucks who are going to go off in their own direction.
And so then what do you do? What do you do with the Bucks at this point? I mean, they've held the tag team titles more times than anybody can remember. It doesn't appear like, FTR. Well, yeah. Is it really only been twice? Okay. Yep, well, I thought times. They had it more time. Okay. Oh. Well, so, they've had the belts a couple of times, but, FTR, who was their arch nemesis, FTR and Lucha Brothers would be their two main opponents. FTR are the current tag team champions. Like, how do you pivot? Do you pivot, with the Young Bucks, and do you have them venture over into Aussie Open?
I don't know when he's back. I don't know when Mark Davis is back. So we don't.
It's a meniscus. So if it's a meniscus repair, it could be 6 months. If it's a meniscus removal, which I would recommend, because I've never seen a tear that's been repaired that hasn't retorn. If it's a removal, it's 6 weeks.
Yeah. So we don't know. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of hard to predict where they're going to go, or even say this is what I would do next, because with door coming, you're not going to start. You're going to start some directions, but not everything, because you've got to build to door. To some point. And, it's a unique position that Tony's in for that. So, and again, you got to think about the bigger picture. You're going to plan for door. Some things coming out of door may lead towards all in, and then you've got to think of all in and all out together. So it's really kind of a clean slate in a lot of ways. Now, I mean, we'll talk about it in a minute. There's some things coming out for MJF that I think you can probably do.
Yeah.
Whether they'll do them, I don't know. I know what I would do now. I thought about that right before the show.
I would try something interesting. That's where I'm at from Jeff. I want something good. Because we've tried it the other way and it's not working.
Yeah. I think they're going towards Cole in MJF eventually, because Cole's talked about it. But in your 4-way, I would almost come out of it, because if you think about, again, we've got door, and then you've got a little bit of time before you start building to all in, all out. If Cole is the plan, and we don't know when he'll pull the trigger on Punk MJF either, that could happen at any point. I'd look to have Darby come out and be positioned as the next challenger, because you need a short term, right? We need a short term before we go into whatever we're going to build towards for All In and All Out. So I would almost do something where in your 4-way, Darby's close, almost has it. Then again, when's Darby going for Mount Everest? Is that June? When is
is that coming up soon? Gosh, I don't even know
this
what the
summer.
date is.
Yeah,
it's this
Is it
summer.
I thought it was. Yeah.
So maybe that's part of it there. Right before he would be going to do Everest, you finish that off. But if you have him in this 4-way where he keeps getting close to winning, but then at the last second it gets, where it gets pulled out from under him type thing, he can come out of it with a claim that he should still get a shot. Because again, it's 4 guys in there. Only one of them has to lose.
Yeah. So who do we think? It's Sammy. That's who I would pin.
Well,
yeah.
when are we turning Jungle Boy heel?
That's what I was thinking too.
Because if Jungle Boy goes heel, you can have him eat the pin, and the frustration of that leads towards more of the heel turn.
That's kind of what I was thinking too last week, because I know people were all up in arms about Roosh eating Jungle Boy's lunch, and then didn't bother me as much because I'm thinking the story that we've did or not, the story that's been told is that Jungle Boy can't handle it, right? Mm-hmm. That he's not up to the task, and he had to cheat to beat Roosh, right? And that's not something an ethical babyface would do. I mean, say what you want about AEW, is nothing is on accident, right? Stuff like that is done on purpose.
Oh yeah, they're logical.
Yeah, so I'm of the mind that Jungle Boy is probably, I think we'll get some kind of a dickhead Jack Perry coming out. Because he even said every time I drive, this is a great line. Again, character, I'm all character. There's a great line he said this week. It's every time I drive back home, I'm a changed person.
Yeah, he was kind of tipping.
Yeah, so that's where okay, this is definitely coming, which kind of justifies a little bit of that main event from last week, that wasn't the main event, that match from last week, because I'm of the mind you pin Jungle Boy. Who knows? I don't understand where Sammy's going right now. Sammy's kind of in this weird tweener role right now where he thinks he's a babyface, but I don't know if anybody else thinks he's a babyface.
They need to figure that out, because he hasn't been coming out with Jericho either.
Right.
Yeah.
So he just suddenly vanished from that, and now he's kind of in this middle ground. But yeah, I think you could have Jungle Boy eat the pin, or Jungle Boy do something to make somebody else eat the pin. Maybe he tries to be a nice guy, doesn't work out, gets pinned, and then that's the trigger that pushes him over the edge. He could end up back with Christian.
Yeah. Well, because Christian was talking about him in that video, in the preview video.
Yes.
And that was kind of again, tipping of the hand. Christian finally got what he wanted out of Jungle Boy. He got Jungle Boy pissed. Did you guys watch NXT back in 2013, 2014?
Before I was watching NXT.
I was basically just a big match hunter. If it was a good match.
Okay, so on NXT, they had an announcer named Alex Riley, who was one of Mrs. Lackeys.
Yeah, I remember
so
that.
he was this clean-cut babyface in a suit, clean-shaven, beautiful haircut. And then one day, he decides he wants to be a bad guy, and he just grows out a stubble beard a little bit and throws on a leather jacket. That's kind of reminding me of what Jungle Boy is doing right now. It didn't work very well, and it's going to be very hard for me to take Jungle Boy seriously as a heel. But hopefully, if he's with Christian, I think it might be able to work. But right now, I'm just not into it, and I just can't fathom that, because I also saw him back in the before he was in AEW. I saw him in All Pro Wrestling, and he just looked like a child. I just can't really see him as a villain. I don't know.
He is the son of Hollywood royalty. Right.
Nepo baby, right? Or Nepo
baby.
He's
a Nepo baby, exactly. So we had a long talk a couple months ago about why they rushed to this Jungle Boy feud, and we couldn't figure that out. We talked about this for weeks. We were trying to figure out why they rushed the end of this thing. I am of the mind now that we rushed this because this is, as we learned today, this is MJF's baby of a storyline, right? He is the one who really kind of spearheaded this whole thing. I think this is why they did that. I think they wanted to I think this has been in the plans for a little bit, because I think you've kind of maxed out what Jack Perry can do as Jungle Boy. They've leaned away from the Jungle Boy name a little bit more. He's growing as a character, and there is something to him. There is a smugness to him that I think could work as a villain, especially if you do put the band back together, but do the for my Star Trek fans, the mirror universe version, the evil version of them. So
goatee.
You should. Goatees are cool. I have one now.
Well, here's the thing. Think about it this way too, from a wrestling perspective. And they rushed that feud to a payoff with the coffin match. If they had extended that a really long time between the two of them and taken it really far with it, like a few matches, a lot of heat, things like that, it's a little harder to justify him linking back up with Christian.
Right.
They just had one match. So it's a little easier to kind of rope in the believability that why would he do that? Because he's realized Christian was kind of right about things. And
same
that's
way,
kind of the angle you play.
The same way MJF was right about. MJF famously says, you can be good, but not being the way you are, not doing the things you do. You got to learn to be a little dirty. So, I mean, like, and I think this is a necessary character progression moment, because I do think we've kind of topped out on what this version of Jungle Boy can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. And he's got to probably change. This is where you change the name.
He's just Jack Perry.
He's just Jack, especially if you're kind of leaning into the Nepo baby thing.
I think it could work.
Everybody knows, but you still want to.
Mm-hmm. The real question is
the name.
So this is a real important booking question. Do you cut that hair?
No. Sorry, this is for John. My bad.
Mike was on that. Mike didn't even think twice. Mike's like,
I'll tell you why it's a no. I'll tell you why.
Well, you tell me why is it a no?
Because that hair has always had heat with me. Ever since I took my wife to Daly City and watched him just outside of San Francisco, and my wife's like, "Oh my God, he has the most pretty hair." She's like, "I wish I had hair like that." And I'm like, "I hate him, and I hate his stupid hair." And then you guys know who Vinny Massaro is? He's an indie wrestler. He's been around a long time. I had him on my old podcast, and he and I, 5 minutes on our podcast, just talked about how much we hated Jungle Boy and his stupid hair. You got to keep the hair. The hair is part of the heat for me.
You see what I'm saying though? Like, there's the hatred. He's an easy guy to hate, right? He's good looking. He's got this hair. He's Luke Perry's kid, right?
Yes.
Like, there's a lot of hateable elements in this guy if they steer into it, right? You got to get rid of Baltimore, which is a shame, but it still could work.
Yeah, I probably would stay away from many facial or physical changes at the start.
Okay.
I'd maybe move towards it eventually, but I don't know if I'd have a total change. But yeah, we'll see what they do. But I think he could eat the pin, try to be the good guy, doesn't work out, and then you go from there.
Which match do you close with? Do you close with this one, or do you close with the Anarchy?
I think he's already said. I think MJF already said they're the main event, right?
Oh, did they? I didn't hear that.
I think he did on TV. I could be wrong, but I think he did.
So one of the ideas that's been tossed around in our Fight Game Media Discord, and I think it was Kevin from the Boom said this one first, and I think a lot of people have been saying it online. So do you close with the 4 pillars with MJF standing tall, and do you do the opposite of what happened at All Out last year, where MJF came out and showed face to CM Punk? Do you have then CM Punk make his first appearance at Double or Nothing and not get into, but interrupt MJF's celebration the same way that MJF did to CM Punk?
It's a straight line path if you wanted to do that. The problem is that you might, if you tease too much of those two, you got to go to them. You either got to find a way now to delay, because if Punk walks out on MJF, then you're telling everybody, hey, it's these guys, right? Mm-hmm. So you could do that, but then you've got to find a way to delay Punk. It depends on when he wants to go to Punk and MJF again, if he wants to do anything in between. You could do that. You could, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, part of me says yes, part of me says no, because the whole, if you go to it, you've got to delay unless you're going to it.
I think you need to hold off on Punk in the world title picture for a while.
Yeah, that's to me, isn't because MJF talked about it again, right? I'm gonna leave. I'm bored here. I'm gonna leave. Isn't Punk that payoff that he stops him, that he takes the belt off of him before he can leave? Isn't that the path if you're thinking about it? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ways. That's kind of like a twist on the Jericho idea.
I'm not a big predictions guy either.
Yeah,
but I think I don't like doing it. But in my mind, I think it should almost go to Kenny next. That's my thought. Because again, he's bored. Like, we've never seen that match either.
Right.
This company's been on for 4 years. We've never had a sniff of MJF and Kenny Omega. And I think that, quite frankly, we need to spike the box offices just a little bit. So I think that could be something, a world title program for the summer that doesn't necessarily have to delay Forbidden Door. You could build that up and maybe do that at All In. I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, what's the big money match that they have right now? And all I can think of is Kenny and MJF, because we never sniffed it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I thought about that as well, and you could maybe do that at All Out. Again, we have so many paths you can take, and it all depends on when you want to pull the trigger on Punk and MJF again. You know, when they're going to go to Cole, because if you wanted to set something up, you can always have a deal where whoever wins the All In main event challenges MJF next week. That can always
That's a good idea.
Stipulation, and you can have that be Cole versus Omega.
We talked about it before. Like, you need a hook, something to bridge All Out to All In, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's a lot of ways.
That would make the most sense, though, is if someone wins a big match and they get MJF the next week, or the champion. I don't know. There's something there.
Yeah. Well, it depends on if you want to announce far out in advance, you can do a couple things depending on if you're taking Cole or Omega. You know, All In can always have a tag match if you already know who you're going to go with. So if it's going to be Cole or Omega, you can always run an All In tag match where MJF and somebody is against them, or however you want to play that out. Or you do the thing where whoever wins one of the big matches at All In is your challenger the following week, because that's your bridge. And you want a couple of bridges if possible in that. You want some things, you want to deliver some moments, maybe some history, some hometown things, and you kind of want to bridge those shows where one show dictates something big on the next, or more than one thing. You know, you can run a deal where something, if you want a title change, where you have the immediate rematch the following week. You can do things like that. Not MJF's title necessarily, but one of the other titles, right? You can do things like that. It really depends on how you want to put the picture together and what you see as, you know, and this is definitely more than anything we're going to do on a conversation, on a call. This is I'm going to go and lock myself into a room for a day, do a lot of brainstorming, write down a whole bunch of dream matches, and start saying, okay, this is where I want to go, and then work backwards. You know, and start asking questions. That's how I look at booking. Booking is problem solving. You're thinking of things, and then you're thinking of how I get there. Where do I want to go? How do I get there? And you're asking yourself questions. What, when, why, all that.
Yeah, you know, I think I like what, you know, John was saying, is that the next challenger should be Adam Cole. I think they're clearly setting him up for that, and I see him beating Jericho this weekend. I don't think that's really a question. I don't see Jericho winning that match. So I think
Kyle O'Reilly coming back.
Yeah. Is he coming back? That neck surgery, I don't know, man. That's
a long surgery.
Yeah. That's a long one. But so I think, you know, Cole beats Jericho. MJF obviously wins the Four Pillars match, because I just don't see anybody in that match that's ready for the title. And then you do All In. You do MJF versus Adam Cole, and then the co-main event could be the number one contendership. Whoever's going to be facing the winner of the main event at the pay-per-view the following week. Now, Mike's opinion, I think, just to finish that story, to close that loop from All Out last year, I think you go All Out MJF versus Punk. That's me. I think that's the biggest money match in AEW right now, next to Kenny and Punk, which is something that you can do later if Kenny does end up resigning. So maybe you put CM Punk in a number one contenders match with, you know, Bryan Danielson or somebody of that stature at All In. Those are your top two matches, and then the winners of those two matches go to All Out, and you get your big pay-per-view match.
Yeah, it would. I think we'll see Punk Danielson at some point.
Yeah,
it would make sense. It'd be a good match. There's some history, right? So you can have some fun with it.
So, you know, the women's divisions, Sean Ross Sapp came out with a report, I think yesterday, or maybe it was earlier this morning, saying that, you know, Jamie Hayter is hurt and the women's division is going to look drastically different. So we're just going to do supposed, right? let's just suppose that Hayter is hurt and they got to take the title off of her, right? How do we, John, how do we take the title off of her at Double or Nothing? And who would you put the title on immediately?
Well, you're assuming immediately. I I don't know. That's a good question, because when you introduce the specter of this could be some game-changing thing, then where do you go, right? There's a lot of paths you can take. And how long is Hayter going to be out? It's difficult. They know the answers to what that mystery thing is. We don't know. I like what they're doing with Willow. I don't know if it's too soon for her. You can do a vacant thing. She vacates the title, gives it to Tony or whatever they're going to do, or Tony gets it because she can't defend. So then Tony gets it, and then you can always have somebody come out to challenge. I don't know if you do a title change though. I mean, that's here you get a belt and you lose. You may want to do a thing where you're just simply going to have two people, Tony being one of them, have to fight for it. I don't know. It's a good question.
I was I don't know fantasy book, but this just struck me when I was mowing the lawn today that I reminded myself of, I think it was Fall Brawl 94, when Steve Austin and Ricky Steamboat were feuding over the U.S. title, and Steamboat hurt his back legitimately and couldn't go anymore. And in the ring, they have Steamboat surrender the title to Austin. Steve Austin talks some shit, and then they bring, I think it's the debuting Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and Duggan wins the U.S. title. So I never liked that angle, but I think that if you did that with Willow here, especially her coming fresh off of beating Mercedes, and just because this is drastically different, that means we're going to see something that we have not seen before. So in theory, if I'm playing it, I'm not a predictions guy, but I'm predicting. No, I'm not predicting. I don't think it's going to happen. But this is an idea that I have. Is just like, if you have her surrender the title to Tony, right? And then Tony Khan or someone's like, oh, but we're going to have a match anyway. And it's Willow, based on the fact that she beat, and you could sell Mercedes, one of the biggest free agent women's star in the world. She just beat her. Now she gets a title shot. And then, because people are like, you got to do some Willow. Like, they actually showed the match. They showed her winning on TV. They showed her, being successful, but it wasn't good enough, because some people are never happy no matter what you do on TV. Like, I think that's something you could do. I'm not saying they will.
What about Statlander? What about Statlander?
Is she healthy? Statlander would be a great idea.
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. See, Tony knows these things. We don't. We know he knows where everybody is on their healing. If she's available, that could be an option too. Maybe they've got that tucked in their back pocket.
People would react well if Statlander came back and did it. I agree with that.
Well, I see. When it comes to Jade, there's like three people who I see right now who could beat the streak. One would be Willow, but they have passed on it. But Willow can always come back into it. Statlander, and then the other one would be Jamie Hayter.
Isn't Jamie a step down though? With her having been the champion for so long now?
If the belt ends up someplace else and she can't get back to it, and you want to give her a moment at Wembley,
yeah, okay, I'm on board with that.
Break the streak at Wembley, give them some history, give the hometown girl a big, or at least the home country girl, right? The big thing.
Yeah,
that would be cool.
Something to think about. So, but it all depends on who Tony had earmarked for. This is the person in my mind who's going to beat Jade. I think it was Statlander. What did he do?
Mike's cat was trying to knock stuff over, and
he was like rubbing his body up against. I didn't even know he was in here because he's a white cat, and the bed
I just saw a white move.
Is a white blanket, and he started rubbing up against the platform that I have the computer on. I have a standing desk that raises and lowers. And he just started rubbing up against him, like, get off of here, dude. Sorry.
I cornered, and it's okay. I cornered myself because my dog did a run in when I was on with Dave and Garrett. He started walking around behind me and hanging out, and I'm trying to pet him to just keep him, kind of occupied, but he's 100 pounds, right? He's a huge beast.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You can't reason with him. He already came walking in, but he can't get to me now. So
nice.
But no, I get, but yeah. And back to it. So it could be Statlander. I think he might have had Statlander in mind to beat Jade. But I think Willow, with the way she's kind of rising, could be her. And then Jamie, if you do the hometown or the Wembley thing, could be an option.
I think I've been feeling like they've been trying to set up Jamie versus Saraya at All In at Wembley.
And they might.
And you got Saraya as the hometown heel and Jamie as the hometown babyface. I could see Saraya getting booed there just because she's WWE. And I think that as much as I did not like the Outcasts at first, I think they've actually started to come into their own a little bit. And
Agreed.
they've really started to gel and improve as a unit, as a heel unit.
Yeah.
It wouldn't shock me, and I don't know how they would get there. It wouldn't shock me to see Saraya coming away with that belt at some point before All In, and then ending up Jamie Hayter versus Saraya at All In, because I could see JD's face right now. Everybody would be so mad to see Saraya get that belt, 100%. And it would work. It would work beautifully. I think that it would really get the moment that they're looking for Jamie.
Yeah, you could do that for sure. And if you have that path, the Jamie versus Saraya, you could also go with Saraya getting the belt but not defending against Jamie, and defending against somebody else and giving her moment from being hometown too. So you can take two paths where both of them get big wins at Wembley, or you have them face off against each other. And I think they've even talked about facing each other a little bit, but whether or not that was the hint or just talk, I don't know.
So let's, I know it's hard to know what's, unless we know what's coming out of All In, but, gun to your guys' heads. If it were up to you, just if these were all your toys, these were your action figures, AEW was your playground, and you were in total control, and you had All In coming up, who is your main event for All In?
You want to go first? I'd have to think of it while we're live.
My main event for All In, I would go, honestly, I would probably go MJF loses the title to Kenny
at All In.
That's what I would do. I'm not booking the company, but that's I'm over the I'm bitterly. I'm just kind of not feeling this MJF title run personally. So I am not a booker. I am a fan. I would like to see that because I think it's a big money match, and I think it'd be interesting. And I would like to see that. I know then you don't get that Kenny Ospreay thing, but I'll be honest with you, I don't really care. That's what I would do.
Okay. Oh boy. All right.
No one's giving JD any booking jobs. That's what I'm coming to say.
Well, it's never as easy as just pick your dream match anyway. I mean, it's like I said, if you're going to do this, you've got to think about both shows together because one impacts the other in some way, usually. And you've got to think about, okay, dream matches, what I want to give at Wembley. What do I want to give it All Out? What do I want to set out All Out through All In? You could do that. You could go ahead and give MJF Kenny there. I have a feeling it's probably MJF Cole, but it depends on where you see that. Do you see that at All In or do you see that All Out? I don't know. I hate being put on the spot when I haven't really thought it through.
My bad.
No, you're good. No. You're good. It just, that's one of those things where, like I said, you're going to sit down and you're going to write about 4 or 5 different ideas. And then you're going to sit there and go, okay, which do I like better? And what do I want to run for one versus the other? Do I want to set up that? It's just, you're going to go through that whole process of dream matches. Kenny MJF would be good. It would mean something. I think they need to do it at some point. Mm-hmm. The question is, where do you put it on the calendar? Because Cole MJF is coming, because Cole's even talked about it, unless of course it's just talk, but he does have some momentum behind him. He's going to come out with a big singles win. Kenny's currently not had, he lost to Moxley in the cage. He's going to be in this, anarchy match. So he's not really positioned coming out of door. He could be, but what if he loses at door to Ospreay? Then you're going to have to start building him back up. Yeah. So that's why it's like, I go, okay, I want to get to MJF and Kenny, but I want to get to it the best way possible. And you've got to sort out the US heavyweight title, right? You've got to sort out that whole thing and how you're going to go about it. And Kenny could be tied with UE in some fashion at All In.
Yeah. Well, especially if I fantasy booked the whole UE and
did you?
I did. Oh, in my head, you guys they don't know about it. Well, I guess I might as well tell Tony my idea.
Do it.
So I think you do Kenny and you do Ospreay at Forbidden Door, and Takeshita turns heel on Kenny, joins forces with Callis, and
he's got to be sorted out there.
And then to come to Kenny's aid, that's when you bring in Ibushi, and then you do something at All In with the Golden Lovers versus Takeshita and Will Ospreay, something like that. That's what you do. And then for me, the main event, I originally wanted Ospreay versus Kenny Omega as the main event of All In. I just don't think that you get there. And I think some of JD's concerns are valid. Like, hey, do you really want to, put the shine on Will Ospreay if you don't know that he's going to be here past, this year? He could absolutely positively go to WWE. I don't know if you want to do that. And so I think just logically looking at everything and just the way that things are being laid out, I think that the most reasonable match that you could put on would be MJF and Adam Cole. But I think that would be up for debate whether or not that is a main event worthy of a stadium show like that. So
I guess what this all comes down to is everybody likes to get on Twitter or in Discords and do their fantasy booking thing. And it's easy to go to do Joey Janela's spring break and just go, here's all these dream matches that mean nothing, but it's a lot harder to actually book. And I just, from my writing experience, I know you got to have a plan doing something, but I mean, like, it's wrestling is such a different animal. Like, and everybody's like, oh, they got to do this, this, and this. It's like, okay, what happens there's so many moving parts and there's so many things we have to consider. It's like, okay, you're here at A, what's D, right? Because we got to hit B and C. Like, and it's not as easy to do as like most fans think, myself included in that.
So, John, I got a question for you, and I've always wondered this about bookers because I know people do it differently. How do you do it? Do you like here's my goal? So like, so do you forecast out like here's the main event of All Out. Here's what I want, and then do you work backwards from there, or do you work from the beginning and then so that's how you do it?
Okay. Well, here's how I do it. So like I said, it's always about asking yourself questions and then taking a problem solving approach. So I figure out where I want to be at the end. Okay. And then I start going, I start filling backwards, but then I also start thinking forwards from where I am now or where I want to be. Like, so for this one, I would go, this is what I want to do for All Out, All In, or at least a general idea. And then I start working back, but then I go, I've got Double or Nothing here. So I'm going to start laying some seeds to where I want to go. And then I'm going to go, now I want to, whatever I come out with Door, right? And Door could have a piece of, the Kenny, Yui, Takeshita, if you want to do Ibushi, all that stuff can come out of Door in some way, the starting point. And then you're going to go from there because Callis is going to come in maybe at Double or Nothing or shortly after, or part of the Door stuff, I would assume, just assuming. So you're laying seeds there. At the same time, I'm also thinking about those bridges as well. You're kind of building bridges between points in time because you got to work on your calendar. And when I used to do things at the independent level, I would have 6 months and 3 months. So I kind of had an idea where I wanted to be 6 months down the road. And then, but I'm really focusing on current to 3 months because what's going to come out of the 3 months is going to start laying seeds for what I was going to do in a 6 month point. So you're kind of bridging things. And then of course that all changes too, because as you start filling in gaps, you might come up with little ideas you want to add, little things you want to change, twists, and then they always have to come up with, people get hurt, whatever. You're going to have all kinds of pivots, but you're building your calendar at the end of the day. And I'm sure if I'm Tony, I'm going to All Out. I might know what I want to do if this MJF contract angle plays out. I might have an idea in the back of my pocket, and that may kind of guide me if that's my bigger long-term plan. But I'm at least saying, okay, this is what I'm doing for All In and All Out. And now I'm starting to work backward, starting to work a little forward at the same time. Because you're building bridges between those things. And Tony has late builds too. I don't know how deep, he always kind of comes in late. So a lot of the stuff for All In, All Out, you're going to start seeing that some stuff be hinted at earlier and some things will carry through, but you'll start seeing things, a lot of stuff towards that end of July, start of August, you'll start seeing a better, clear picture.
And is that his way of just trying to heat things up just right before the pay-per-view to capture the most amount of interest closer to the showtime?
Yeah, he's trying to generate that momentum, and you always try to do that. You're always trying to pick that momentum up. It makes sense. I mean, there's times where I think, maybe a little more time would have been really good, but I mean, he's doing it and he's doing a good job. So
I think we've just all got that WWE brain where they're constantly building to a pay-per-view. So it's like when it's like some of us for 2 decades of, okay, we always have to be building toward this pay-per-view, and their schedule's a lot different. Like you look at the first WrestleMania, like we didn't build that main event until what, 3 weeks before, right? When they had the free show on MTV. That week there was nothing like T just showed up. You know what I'm saying? Like I think we think of this like, oh man, everything needs to be building this one spot for 3 months. Right? We need to start seeing who there. I think a lot of fans expect like 3 months ahead. I should know what the card is. Right? That's just not the way. It's not the way this promotion is booked. And
the fans shouldn't know it 3 months out. But
right. But everyone thinks. But listen to any podcast, they'll tell you, well, what's the build? How do we know what's going on? And it's always there. And you're kind of like, oh, there it is. It's just not as blatant as we think it should be sometimes.
Right. Yeah. Well, like say, for example, if you want to have a challenger 3 months down the road, you're starting your build, but nobody may realize that that's where that person's going. You're just starting to kind of like add to the profile, right? You're starting to build them up a little bit, build them up and giving them some wins and positioning them. You're positioning your pieces, right? But you're not pulling the trigger until you're ready to tell everybody, yeah, this is it. Or this is where you're going to go. So, it's kind of hard. It's kind of like the Derby thing that I just suggested. Okay. And I'm, that's not me saying this is definitely what I would do, but I'm just saying, if you're looking for something for MJF, the immediate challenger coming out, you could take it out of that match because he's wrestling 3 different guys in a 4-way. So, and he's only going to beat one of them, unless there's some crazy pivot that's going to happen that we don't know. He's only beating one of them. So there's 2 other guys who are saying that they deserve a shot that are not going to get a shot. So you can always pick one of them to give the shot. And that would be something MJF does coming out. That buys your time, right? That pushes his calendar out to when you actually have to start building him to something. If that's, the choice they make. It's all about choices at the end of the day.
Well, John, I think I could ask you questions to keep you here all freaking night. But I think we're already at the 50-minute mark, man. And I think we're going to go. Yeah.
It went fast.
Yeah, man. No, this has been a great conversation. I'm just sitting here. I have like 10 more questions I want to ask just right off the top of my head. But I think I'd like to save it for another episode if you want to come back on. If we haven't like scared you away too much.
No, we're good. No, I mean, I will say this, though. The only thing that makes me nervous is saying, where would you definitely go right now? And that's just because when I think of, or when I try to book, I always think farther out and I start, I take a lot of notes and I come up with like 3 or 4 different paths. And you can have 3 or 4 different paths for multiple people or multiple stories. And then you start going, I like this one a little more than that one. And I like this. And you start fine tuning. And we don't know too. Here's the other thing. We haven't even talked about this and I know we got to wrap, so I'll make it fast. Collision impacts things. So it's really hard to pick because there's a kind of maybe there isn't roster split. So how does that impact things if there is one, or at least a softer split or something to that effect? How are they going to navigate that? That impacts the choices we make too, because if we want to go towards, a Punk Danielson at some point, or I know the rumor was like Punk Joe out there. Somebody was talking. I don't know if that's actually going to come to pass. But there's a lot of different Punk can do this, Punk can do that. Where do you start building to those things? And you're going to position those people on the show. Like you said, coming out of Double or Nothing, or certain people are just going to kind of split off in one way or the other. And that will impact to what happens. You've got to put those pieces in place and position them where you want them.
Well, yeah, we could go forever, John. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Yeah, we really wanted to get you on for a long, long time, and you absolutely delivered. And we're gonna have to bring you on. I know. Eventually, we have to ask you about Black Scorpion. I want to talk Black Scorpion one day with you.
Sting. I got a magic trick.
Sting.
Yeah.
I would love to talk to you about the thing we talked about a couple years ago with WCW and the Jericho story, like those things. I would love to have people hear from your words the story of you.
Oh, you mean the Jericho idea from WWF?
Both, actually. Both the Cruiserweight thing with WCW and the Jericho story. Like, those are fantastic stories.
I'll give this teaser. If Tony's plan for MJF is somebody taking the title off of him before his contract expires, you're looking at the hook of the Jericho idea.
All right. Well, I'm really excited about that. John Muse, thank you so much for doing this. You're welcome. Obviously, you're one of the guys now, so thank you so much. We'd love to have you on
Thanks,
anytime.
I appreciate it. Take care, guys.
Thanks, buddy.
Yep. Take
See ya.
care.
Bye.
See ya.